The subject of today's lesson is all about updating. So at this point, you know how to view databases, how to describe a table, you know how to select and delete, but how can we update a row? And this is something that, as you can imagine, would be fairly common. In the example of our blog, you create a blog posting, but then later you find a typo. Well, you need to have a way to update the body of your blog posting. And what you're actually doing behind the scenes is performing an update query to update the body of the post that has that specific ID. Okay, so for example, let's create a new table because we want to make sure that we don't forget anything. So let's create a new table for the posts. So we will run create table posts, and what will this have? Well, first we know that the posts need to have unique IDs, as we've learned. So we will do ID, and it's an integer, and it should auto increment. Good. What else should it have? Well, a post should have a title probably. So let's stick with var_car, and maybe we will do 150. Next, we certainly need to have a body field, and this will be the body of our post. And in this case, rather than doing something like var_car, obviously 150 wouldn't even be enough unless it's very short. We're going to use a text field in this case. Next, we need an author, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Well, we know that we have that list of users, or our list of authors. So we don't want to duplicate any effort. So I don't want to have here maybe an author, which is varchar 100, because what we want to do is be able to specify a different table. And this is where you can begin to learn about relationships. You have a table for posts, and you have a table for users. And that way you can group them together. Now, we are not quite there. We're going to take a look at relationships and joining tables in a future lesson. But for now, just think about it from the perspective of we need a way to create a connection between one user from the users table and this specific post within the post table. And what we can do here is say author ID. When we assign a value to that, that will be our way of saying if author ID is 2, then the author of this post is whatever has an ID of 2 from the users table, if that makes sense. And we might even want to update the users table to be authors, but we can take a look at that shortly. In this case, it's going to be integer, and we want to make sure that that is not null. And really, we should probably make sure that all of them are not null, but that's okay for this little example. I don't want to flood you with information. So we know that a post will have a title, it should have a body, it should have an author that created the post, and that's going to be fine for now. Maybe in a real-world application, there would be a connection for the category, a relationship for any tags that have been applied, but we're not going to go there just yet. The final thing we need to do, once again, is set the primary key is going to be that ID field. All right, that looks good to me, so let's run it. And we get query OK, so let's show tables. There we go. Now we have a new post table. Let's describe it, and sure enough, we do have all of these fields. Now, I want you to note that because we did not apply not null to the title and body, the default is to allow it. And if you take a look right here, yep, title is yes, body is yes, but we explicitly set not null to author ID, so it gets set to no. So if you do not want to allow a null value when inserting into that row or updating it, you need to make sure that you set that. Now, in this case, we need something to work with, so we're going to insert into the posts. Now, in this case, in order to update a row, we need to have a row to update. So let's run a quick insert query. We're going to insert into posts. We'll insert title, body, and author ID. The values for what we just specified will be my first post, and the body will be the body of my post, and then the author ID. Generally, in real-world projects, you will fetch that value dynamically. But in this case, we're going to manually set it, and we'll set an author ID of 1. So if I run that, we get query OK. But if you're still confused, what is that 1 here? Well, watch what happens if I select star from users. In this case, aha, I made a mistake. I assumed that the user row had an ID of 1, but I must have deleted it and added another one, in which case it became 2. So at this point, we have an issue. Because if I select star from posts, we have a post created by an author or user that has an ID of 1, but we don't have one of those at all. So let's perform our first update. We're going to update the row that has an ID of 1, and we're going to set its author ID equal to 2. update. And what table are we updating? We're updating the post table. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to set the author ID to 2. So we will set author ID equals 2. And now, where do we set that? Do we do it globally, meaning the entire table gets updated? You could do that if you want to update every single row, but I don't think you want to do that. Instead, you just want to update the row that has an ID of 1. So the terms will be where the ID equals 1. Now if I run that, yep, we get query OK, and now we get rows matched 1, and the changed was 1 as well. Now if I select star from posts one more time, there you go. You've run your first update command and author ID has been set. Now you still might be confused about this author ID section, and if you are, that's okay. It's very confusing at first. I had a lot of trouble understanding relationships when I was first learning this. You need to think about each table containing its own set of information, and you don't want to add too much. So for our post table, we wouldn't want to have sections for the author's information. We don't want to have something for their first name, their last name, their email address, their biography. And you can imagine the same thing for other fields. That just makes the table too muddy. It's better to have a separation of concerns where you have a table for your users, you have a table for your posts, you have a table for your tags. And that way, for example, when you want to list all of the tags that have been assigned in your blog, it becomes much easier to work with. Now, in this case, if you want to grab the user, you're going to want to use joins. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that, and then we'll discuss it more in a future lesson. But just to give you a teaser, we could say select star from the post table, and we're going to run an inner join the users table. So we're going to join that users table into this query. And what is the condition? Well, the condition needs to be that the users table, its ID field, needs to equal the post.author ID field. So now if I run that, take a look what we've done here. Now this should be confusing to you. You haven't learned any of it. That's okay, I will explain it all. But now I want you to note that this select query joins 2 tables together. Now we have the title, the body, the author ID, and then also the ID from the users table, the first name from the users table, the last name, and the email address. Now, it very well might be possible that you only want the first name and the last name from that users table. And that's okay, you just modify your query. You could say select title and the body field, as well as the first name and the last name. Now, something you need to be aware of is if the tables have the same names, for example, if the post table has a title field or column, but the users table has a title column as well, you need to preface it with the table name. So you could do users.lastname. But in this case, there is no overlap, so that's okay. So we're going to select the title, the body, the first name, the last name from the post table, and we're going to inner join that users table on the condition that, once again, users.id equals posts.author'id. There we go, and now we have a more streamlined version. And we also might want to grab the ID as well, but that's okay, you get how it works, and we'll discuss joining in more detail in a future lesson. So back to updates. We know if I run select star from posts again, if we want to update one more time, it's update the table. And what are we going to set? What are we going to change, if that helps? We're going to set title equals my updated post. And then what are the terms? Well, the terms are where the ID equals 1. And now we have updated this row accordingly. Now, what if we want to update 2 things? Well, in that case, update posts set title equals updated again. Now I'm going to do a comma and say body equals updated body. And then we continue on. Where ID equals 1, we run our select command, and now we have updated both of those rows. Now the final thing we're going to take a look at today is, what if you don't want to update a row specifically, you want to update one of these column names, and that's important. For example, maybe, I think title works, but maybe you want to change the column name from title to name or subject. Well, in that case, we need to do something different. We need to run an alter command. So let's try it out. I'm going to hit Command K to clear the screen, and now I'm going to run alter table. And which table are we altering? We're going to alter the post table. And we're going to change title to what? And I believe we decided subject, even though once again, title is the right choice. We just want something to change. We'll change it back to title shortly. Now, the last thing we need to do is declare what type it is. So we're changing it to subject, but is it still a varchar? Yes, it is. So I will restate that just to be safe. There we go. Now I run it. Query OK, one row affected. And now if I describe our post table again, now I want you to note that we have updated it to subject and we've changed the type. Now in this case, as I noted, title was the right choice. So let's do it together. Alter table, posts, and we're going to change subject to title, varchar, and let's update that to 150 in this case. Now, one more time, describe posts. I'll clear the screen, and whoops, I spelled that wrong. There we go. Now we've updated that to title and varchar 150. Okay, so as always, have a play with this. Try to commit these to memory. I promise you, you might be thinking, wait a minute, there's lots of GUI apps that we can use that make it a lot easier. But trust me, from years of experience, take the time and learn how to do SQL by hand. It's going to save you a lot of time and headaches. So play around with how you can alter tables so you can update columns or you can drop columns. And also play around with how you can update tables, such as the post table. All right, my name is Jeffrey Wei, and stay tuned for the next lesson. I'll see you later.